Welcome back to Kiefer Customs, everybody. After about 3 weeks, I just got a package from Spain that I've been waiting on for the Huina 583 wheel loader. While I was waiting, I don't have them laying here. I just took some Dremel sanding stones and cut the tread out of the middle. It's not a perfect job, but it'll work. I think they look a lot more scale now, and it did soften them up quite a bit. If you go back in the first 583 build that I did, I took the tires off and I ground all that plastic out of the inside of the rim that it's hitting. And if I remember right, I think I put 2 wraps of wheel weights, lead wheel weights on them. If I remember correctly, though, they were so soft, and I didn't do the tread mod though on that one. But I remember the tires, I think they had a hard time staying on the beads, if I remember correctly. So for now, I'm not going to cut the webbing out of the rim. I'm not going to add wheel weights. I might stick some on the inside maybe just to get them a little heavier, but I'm not sure yet. I kind of like how soft they got like that, and I think they look a lot more scale. So anyways, there's that. So let's get back to the Magom order. I ordered, and in that first video, the first 583 I did, I used Huina's updated steering gearbox. This time I opted for Magom's since I was already placing an order anyways. So I'm going to try theirs. And I believe, except for soldering the motor leads on, there's no other modifications needed with this one. And we'll see. I'll add to this video as I get into it. But I hope that's picking that up. A beautifully machined gearbox, steel metal plate, brass gear, no play at all. And like I said, I think this one doesn't require any more modification on the inside to get it installed. So we'll get there. Extended arm from Magom, and it lets the bucket tip down farther, and I'll show that too once we get that on. And then here was the whole reason for ordering from Magom. The upgraded metal aluminum gearboxes, steel axles. And again, when I get this apart, I'll come back on and show it. I think it's already been said these motors are actually smaller than the stock ones, but the whole overall gearbox is better, smoother, and more powerful. So I'm going to pause the video for a minute, and I'm going to get this all tore apart, and I'll bring you back when we get into it. Alright, I got everything apart, and I'll show when I go back to assemble it. I have some issues with the screws holding all that on, like they're stuck in the plastic of the base. I'll explain that thoroughly when I get to putting it back together. I took the whole front end apart. This is the first time I've been in the front end. I've never had the front apart, so it's kind of deceiving. I made it a little rougher than I should have probably because I didn't want to cut all my wire ties and unplug everything. So I left everything plugged in. But I have it apart, and I got to the front drive axle. And you can see the motor leads. And let's see, these motors and the steering gearbox motor for that matter, they all have a red positive for the positive lead, which is great. And so do the gearboxes. So I want to make sure, because I think the rear faces a different direction, so I want to make sure that's going to be correct. If I put this one in here like this, I want to make sure they're going the right way. Well, I think what we'll do is we'll get them both in, and we're going to plug a battery in it, and we're going to check them before I go too far to make sure I get them wired correctly. We'll tear this gearbox apart. I think there's 4 screws on each side. I could have made this a lot easier if I would have unplugged everything, but I really didn't want to do that. So I'm just going to deal with it like this. It'll be okay. There's definitely sand all over in it. If you remember right, I bought this on Motion RC's open box sale because the rear drive motor didn't work. So somebody did play with it for a little while because there's real fine sand everywhere. All right, 4 on that side, and then I believe there's 4 on this side. I don't think I can get that one. Oh, we're gonna have to get a smaller screwdriver. So, all right, and we're back. And what we have here is a mess of parts. All of the metal gears, the old motor. I cut the leads off. And it's going to be hard to show on camera. But the center section of this, you just have to cut out a little bit. It's really not a whole lot. I'm keeping the stock motor leads, so I fed them through. Hopefully I left enough. And it should bolt back together like that. I already put the 4 screws in the other side. We should be able to, I should be able to power this up and check it for rotation. I did put the red lead on the red dot of the motor, assuming that that was the positive side. Drop the screw. I really hope I don't have to take it back apart. And there it is. It's all nice and tight. And like I said, I should be able to plug a battery in. With I have a mess. Let me get some stuff out of the way here. Try not to mess with too much here. I think if I can get the battery hooked into it. All right. I just have to find out what I did with the remote. All right, let's see here. Shut the sound off. So this goes in like that. Oops. Yeah, make sure you get the right stick. And it's wrong. And that's funny because the rear doesn't run now. So it's backwards. It sure is smooth though. Well, and that's interesting that now the back doesn't run. All right, well, I'm going to have to take that back apart and switch the leads. All right, I have the front end all bolted back together, and every time I did something, I checked to make sure everything worked electrically. I have the rear end tore apart. The one side, you know, the gearbox just goes right in like it should. I left the other side on because the wires stick through. It's going to be hard to see, and I should have showed before I did it, but there was another one of these bosses on this side. So basically I just cut it off with the like side nippets. And then you can see where the old motor used to sit, if this will show. It had this piece of plastic in there. Basically I just dremeled it out into the circular pattern. And then you slide this in, and there it is, all nice and tight. You know, it's not going to move, nothing wiggles. So that's all you have to do there. I'm going to get these motor leads prepped and get them soldered on, and then I'll bring you back when we test for rotation to make sure we got them all right. All right, so here we have a learning experience for all of us. So I wired the front motor up with the red to the positive dot on the motor, and then the white to supposedly the negative side, and it was backwards. So we flipped the leads. The rear motor, which sits in the opposite direction, I soldered the red lead to the red spot on the motor, like I did the front the first time, and it was backwards. So I flipped the leads. So on both front and rear motors, the red lead goes to the opposite post that has the red dot. The red dot takes the white wires on both, and then, you probably can't see it, and now my rear is working. If you notice, before I took the rear apart, the rear motor was not working again, which was the reason I got this on the open box sale to begin with. So it definitely had a motor issue with the stock motor. But now we have them both running same direction like they should be. So that's good to go. I'm going to button up the rear axle, and then I'm going to move on to the steering gearbox. All right, I got the Magom steering gearbox in, and it was wired the same way. The negative went to the red dot on the motor. I'll try to give a little close-up of this. Show you how this one goes in with no modifications. Yeah, I'm missing a screw. I'll find one. I'll get it put together. I'll show you like the speed. I don't know, the gearbox has a little bit of a noise to it. I took it apart, put a little marine grease in it. It is what it is, I guess. I'll get it all bolted together. But back to the original problem I tried to discuss in the beginning. All of these screws that hold the back end on here, when they come up through these holes, I don't know what they did, but they were so tight up in there they actually wouldn't screw out. I actually had to take somewhere around here. I took an Allen driver and actually smacked the end of the heads to get those screws to pop out. So I'm going to do away with these anyways. I'm going to use Team K&K stainless steel hardware up in through there. I was actually going to put it out throughout. I didn't, because I really don't plan on taking it back apart unless something breaks. Which leads me to, if you're going to do any of this or tear this down this far, if you even think you're going to paint this thing a different color than what it comes, I'd suggest doing it all at once. I really don't like this color. If you go back to my original video on the first one, I did paint it a little bit different. I didn't tear it completely down. I'm still unsure on this one. Technically the first show isn't until June. So I have plenty of time to decide what I want to do there. So I'm going to get my stainless steel hardware out, kind of pick some things up, and I'm going to get it bolted back together, and then we'll do a little final review on it. All right, I ran into a little snag. We talked about these screws going up through these holes. I checked my K&K hardware, like the flat heads and the regulars, and they're actually a little bit bigger heads. They're really tight in these holes. So I think what I might do is maybe stick these in the Dremel and touch them on some sandpaper to make them just a hair smaller so they don't get stuck in there. But right now I have it all snapped back together like it should be, and the center steering bolt is in. So again, our drives are great, and the steering, look how fast it is. Now, it is kind of loud. I don't know, I hope that quiets down a little bit, but this is my first time using the Magom one. I used the Huina one on the first one I did. I don't remember it being that loud, but it's definitely fast. So that's cool. So I'm going to get the rest of this all screwed together, and then we'll move on to that bucket attachment, extension arm. Yeah, that works pretty good. I just chucked these up in a drill, run them on the file for a little bit. Basically just enough to smooth them off and flatten them out. And that takes enough material off that I don't even remember where I was at. They don't get stuck down in there now. There. Yeah, I'll do that to the rest of them and then we'll get back on. Okay, we got the stock arm off, and here you can see the difference. I think it's like 5 millimeter longer. Nice little machined aluminum piece. So we'll stick that in here. I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite on this shoulder screw. It doesn't go in very tight, so I don't want that loosening up. Kind of a lot of side to side play. I don't know, I probably should have shimmed that. But we'll see. We'll put the bucket on. Make sure these are all screwed in where they need to be. And we'll get back to you guys. Oh boy, we messed up big time. So here's a pretty good warning to you. Pay very close attention when you put it back together. You know, I had this whole assembly off when I had the front end apart. Totally didn't pay attention to which side this cylinder was on. So if you can see, it needs to be on the other side of that to attach to this. So, lesson learned. I'm at least pulling half of this back apart so I can get that cylinder on the right side. So, pay attention when you're taking things apart, how it goes. Alright, there we have it. I got everything back together and working the way it should. Drive is nice and smooth. It's supposed to be more powerful. Yeah, steering nice and fast. Like I said, it's kind of loud, but put the bucket extension. All the way back. Still has a little bit of slop in it. Much greater dumping angle. It'll dump everything out of it. Next on my list, AliExpress has the quick detach coupling. And, excuse me. Oh, thank you. If you blessed me. Oh, shit. Anyways, And they have a larger bucket. This bucket will actually sit inside of it, and it's a smooth bucket, which I think is going to work great for me because we mostly use the ground rubber, the chipped rubber. So I think that bucket will work a lot better. And the way the quick detach works, it actually sets everything out about a half of an inch. So I think that it'll raise it. Whoa, wrong way. It'll yeah, so that's all as higher it'll go. Most of the shows we go to, we have like loading ramps and a dock to get these up just a little bit higher to be able to dump into the trucks. But with that extra little half-inch sticking out, that'll be a plus too. So there we are. Pretty powerful still. I mean, it'll pick up. So there we are. The Magom Huina 583 wheel loader. Thanks for following along.